Thank you for listening to the show on Really Big Something Channel. December 4th, 2017.
2:05 here on the great WRKO. Okay, later this hour, you don't want to miss it. There are going to be now 2 ballot initiatives. It looks like they have the signatures in November 2018 that will dramatically impact you, your family, your taxes, your life in this state. Believe me, you don't want to miss it. But first, Antifa strikes again, this time in Harvard Square. It's a local story that is now quickly going national, and frankly, I'm just surprised it's taken this long. So, much of the local media, not all, but most of the local media refuses to touch this story because they continue to cover up for the domestic terrorist hate group Antifa. Matthias Thorpe, he is a co-organizer for the Boston Free Speech rallies, 28 years of age, was brutally attacked by a mob of Antifa fanatics on Friday evening. In fact, 7 to 10 of them beat him so badly that it resulted in multiple fractures in his face. They put him in the hospital. Here is exactly what happened. There was a lecture at the Harvard Co-op, a sort of a bookstore associated with Harvard University, by Mark Bray. He is an author of the Anti-Fascist Handbook. He is one of the key intellectual supporters or pillars of the so-called anti-fascist / Antifa movement. And one of the big points that he makes, both in the book and in all of his public pronouncements, is that if you see a Nazi, i.e. a Trump supporter, a conservative, somebody who's right of center, a libertarian, a constitutionalist, whatever, a non-leftist or a non-liberal, you have the moral obligation to physically assault them. He calls for open violence, physical violence, against all conservatives, libertarians, and Trump supporters. And so Thorpe, with a few friends, wanted to listen in at Mark Bray's discussion at the Harvard Co-op. They said that their goal wasn't to shut down the event or disrupt it, because this is what often happens at these free speech rallies, but they wanted to just sort of be a bit of a troll, be a bit of a gadfly, and probe and ask questions such as, hey, Hitler killed 6 million Jews, horrible, despicable, horrendous, but communism killed 100 million. How come none of you ever denounced communism? Well, when they started to go there and throw out a few comments or ask some pointed questions, the crowd got extremely rowdy. They don't like that. And they began to push back. So what Thorpe and some of his friends did was they began, as I said, to troll him a little bit. Say, Trump, 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 or build that wall. So eventually, they were thrown out of the event. Nothing bad had happened at that point. They were just thrown out. Okay. Once they were outside, Thorpe said that he and his friends decided to stick around to have a debate or discussions with the other moonbats, the hard leftists who had attended the Harvard Co-op lecture. He said for a while they had some interesting debates back and forth, etc. But then all of a sudden, at around 9 p.m., as he was planning to leave, a woman, a hardcore moonbat, a big Antifa supporter, walked out of the co-op, pointed to him, and began shouting, "He is a Nazi." And of course, just as the lecturer was saying, and as Antifa constantly promotes, you see a Nazi, you beat up a Nazi. You punch a Nazi. You assault a Nazi. So, hey, let's just put good Antifa doctrine into practice. They said, aha, he's a Trump supporter. Let's beat the living daylights out of him. And so, out of the blue, this girl whacks him in the face. Then apparently another woman came, sucker punched him from the back, and then all of a sudden, it wasn't just the women, then men came, there was a whole swarm of them, punching him in the face. At least 7 to 10 people, he said, were then beating him relentlessly. He says his assailants were not wearing masks. That's because they had just come out of a lecture by one of their Antifa intellectual gurus. He said that he broke free. The group began mocking him, shouting things like, "Run, Nazi, run." He said, and I think this was his mistake, to be honest with you, when they were taunting him with "Run, Nazi, run," after they had been beating him and pummeling him, he said he got extremely angry and ran back into the group and threw one punch. He said he wanted to go back in there and nail one of them. He said from that point in, the group then came in, they swarmed him like a pack of jackals, and then they began punching him over and over, kicking him, stomping him. He was on the ground, covered in blood. His face was completely swollen. His face, in fact, has been fractured in 3 places, so severely that a bone has been completely detached. He's going to have a plastic surgeon essentially fix his face, correct his face. Now, he said this took place in the main area of Harvard Square, right outside the bookstore. Nobody did anything to stop the assault. In fact, as the mob began stomping, kicking, beating him, others were there cheering them on. He now says he wants to press charges, and not just that he wants to press charges, he now wants the Justice Department to get involved, because he says, and I agree with him, that this was a domestic terrorist attack. Now, let me be crystal clear, okay? You go to these events, you're playing a little bit with fire. When you go to an event full of Antifa thugs, you're taking a risk. There's no question about that. I'm not justifying what they did. I think what they did was disgusting and deplorable. But the fact of the matter is, when you go to an Antifa event, you're asking for trouble. When you start trying to debate them or point out inconvenient facts, like, communism killed 100 million people, you're going to spur an immense reaction. You yell out Trump or build that wall, for them, that's almost a license to attack you. You then get thrown out of the event. You continue to debate with some people outside, and then a woman comes out and sucker punches you, then another one, and then before you know it, you have 7 or 10 people around you, and they're punching you in the face repeatedly. You then break free. What he should have done, to be candid, is just keep on running, call the police, and file assault charges. Instead, and I can understand, he's angry, he's upset, he's just been assaulted, he's been punched in the face repeatedly, they're taunting him, calling him a Nazi, "Run, Nazi, run." So he gets really upset, and he jumps back into the crowd, and he punches somebody. Now you're putting yourself at the mercy of this rabble. And that's when they really started to kick him and stomp him, and I mean beat him black and blue. Beat the living daylights out of this guy. Is what he did wise? No. If he was my son, would I tell him to go to the Antifa event? I'd say, son, avoid them like the plague, because I don't think it's going to end well. All of this being said, is this not America? For example, when I give talks and lectures, you have no idea how many left-wingers show up. They shout while I'm talking. They try to shout me down. They call me names, or they try to ask ridiculous questions, thinking they're making some kind of a profound point. That's what it is. Okay, if they're too disruptive, please kick them out. But what you don't do in a free society, in a genuinely tolerant society, is tell the mob, wink, wink, go get this guy. In fact, not even wink, wink. Their motto is, you see a Nazi, you punch a Nazi. You see a Trump supporter, you beat the living hell out of a Trump supporter. And so, from what they were saying on the lectern, to what they've been saying in public and at rallies, to what they did to Matthias Thorpe, is exactly what Antifa is all about. They are a domestic hate group and a domestic terrorist organization whose sole purpose is to physically assault, beat up, and if possible, kill anybody who happens to be a conservative or support Trump. Now, what is to me incredible is, where the hell's the police? I know this is Cambridge, and I know it's the Cambridge Police Department. So even in Cambridge, the Moonbats call the shots. They run the show. But I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, whoa. How do we go from having a heated discussion to a mob beating the crap out of this guy and putting him in the hospital and disfiguring his face and shattering his face? Are you kidding me? These are the same people who shout down conservatives at college campuses, who will not even allow them to speak. These are the same thugs that will burn down campuses or threaten conservative speakers, whether it be at Berkeley or you can name your campus. But when you turn their guns on them and say, you know what, if you can shut us down, if you can make ridiculous comments, if you can try to disrupt us, why can't we come to your event and have a little fun? You can troll us, but we can't troll you. The double standard here is absolutely incredible. I mean, it is unbelievable. Where's Maura Healey? Where's Governor Baker? Where's the Cambridge police chief? How come nobody is condemning this act of domestic terrorism and domestic violence? So now what they're basically saying is, if you're an Antifa person and you don't like the fact that a Trump supporter comes to one of your events at a bookstore to challenge a lecturer, you have the right to take a club and smash their head in, or have a mob or a gang of thugs kick them, stomp them, and beat them, and it's no problem? You know, the left keeps going on about tolerance and compassion and respect for diversity, yet they have no tolerance themselves, no compassion themselves, and no respect for real intellectual or ideological diversity. They are liberal fascists. The only ones that are truly intolerant is the left themselves. And I'm telling you that these are like the brown shirts. They're a roving pack of paramilitaries. And if we don't start reining them in soon, there's going to be a hell of a lot more of Matthias Thorpe's, not just in Harvard, not just in Massachusetts, but all across America. Bill in Newton, you're up next. Go ahead, Bill.
Hi, Jeff. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you, Bill?
Jeff, you can do a lot of good by in the future. In lieu of saying Nazi from now on, just say National Socialist. Say things like Adolf Hitler was a National Socialist. Nazi stands for the National Socialist German Workers' Party. And the young people don't realize that Nazi stands. The platform of the National Socialist German Workers' Party was anti-capitalist. And
leftist. Hitler was a leftist. You're completely right. It was anti-capitalist, pro-socialist, and leftist.
Exactly. The point is, even conservative intellectuals use the term Nazi. They shouldn't. Any time you want to use the word and quote unquote Nazi, use National Socialist. And young people say, "What are you talking about, National Socialist?" Well, Hitler was a National Socialist. Mussolini was one of the foremost socialist intellectuals in the early 20th century.
Bill,
you know that, right?
I not only do I know it, I've taught it, and you're completely right, Bill. Let me ask you, do you think now Antifa, in some ways, is having the left return to its fascist National Socialist roots?
Well, I don't even want to use the word fascist anymore because that has nothing. Fascist is a catch-all. It's a Pavlovian trigger term. I don't care for that word at all. Mussolini, I don't know. All I know is the Italian regime under Mussolini was collectivist. Okay, it wasn't. It was left wing. And the Hitler regime was left wing. As far as Franco was concerned, it was Catholic collectivist, the Falanga. But Nazi is just a Pavlovian trigger term, which most people are captive to. And they shouldn't use that term anymore.
Bill, so let me rephrase the question.
I want to say one other thing, Jeff.
Go ahead.
The doctrines of the National Socialist German Workers' Party was occultic and satanic. And I wish you it's just and the Marxist-Leninist regime of the Soviet Union was satanic in origin. You're religious, I'm religious. And more people should say who are religious is both regimes were satanic. Murderous and satanic and evil.
Yes. And by the way, Hitler was a pagan. And most of the leading National Socialists were pagans. Hitler was a rabid anti-Christian. He wasn't just anti-Semitic, he was rabidly anti-Christian. But look, I don't want to get off track. What you're seeing now with Antifa is in many ways the National Socialist left reverting now to its roots. They are the modern-day brown shirts. And all that's missing are the uniforms. Instead, they wear black, they have the black masks, they don't have the same brown shirt uniforms, the Nazi swastika, but outside of that, it is the same modus operandi, the same thuggish behavior, the same intolerance. And so my question to all liberals everywhere is this. Where the hell is the rule of law and where the hell is tolerance? So not only are you shutting down free speech rallies, but now when somebody comes to one of these Antifa rallies or lectures, you're now allowing the mob to smash in the skulls of anybody who dares challenge you or question you? Are you kidding me? 617-266-6868 is what happened at the Harvard Co-op bookstore. Was it an act of domestic terrorism? Should they be prosecuted? And have you been a victim of Antifa? 617-266-6868. More with your calls. Next. 226 here on the great WRKO. Okay, Antifa strikes again, this time at the Harvard Co-op bookstore at a lecture Friday by a pro-Antifa intellectual guru. And one of the organizers or co-organizers of the Boston Free Speech rallies was attacked by a mob of radical left-wing thugs. They beat him black and blue. They fractured his face, 3 bones. Severely dislocated. He's going to need plastic surgery. He's been hospitalized. They beat him. They kicked him. They stomped him repeatedly. It's a miracle they didn't kill him. Well, now listen to this. This is not Harvard. This is now Somerville, the great sanctuary city of Somerville here in Massachusetts. A pickup truck and a home in Somerville over the weekend were vandalized with anti-Trump messages. Martin Tompkins, who is a Trump supporter, found his property completely covered in red paint Saturday morning. His crime? He had a small poster in his window that said, "Make America Great Again," and he had a pro-Trump bumper sticker on his truck. He said he woke up Saturday morning. His house was completely, the outside of his house, completely vandalized. Trump is a Nazi. Trump is next. You're next. They also vandalized his car. And even his neighbor, Mary Freeman Lind, says, I don't agree with his politics. I didn't vote for Trump, but he's a really incredibly nice neighbor. And this is not the way to fight Donald Trump. So now they're not just beating them up at bookstores. They're going after them in their homes, in their pickup trucks. They're going to come after us wherever we are because now they believe they have a license to attack. And my question to you is this. It's very simple. What happened to the liberal slogan, Hate has no home here. Resist hate. Love trumps hate. I'm not feeling the love, but I'm certainly feeling the hate. Vinny in Boston, you're up next. Go ahead, Vinny.
Jeff, what did you just say? They're going to come after us? Please,
one by one, my friend.
Come after me. I welcome it. I welcome it. You know, one thing I got to say is I'm a roll-off dumpster driver in Cambridge, and one of my big customers is Harvard University. There's a cop every 20 feet on a corner. Where were they when this guy was getting his head stomped in?
According to witnesses, they did nothing.
They were there and they did nothing.
They did nothing. They just watched. Until they finally stopped beating him, and then he staggered, and he flagged down a police officer, called 911. He lay on the ground, covered in his own blood. You got to see the picture of this guy. I mean, his face, it's unrecognizable. I mean, his whole face is swollen.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I think a bunch of me and my Trump supporting buddies got to gear up hats and shirts, and we're going to do a little Christmas shopping in Harvard Square and see what happens.
Vinny, thank you for that call. Please,
take care.
Please take care. Look, he was joking. Please don't do any violence. We don't want to become like them. But this is what I'm saying. Look, I don't want to bring everything full circle, but I have to make this point. They're accusing Trump of colluding with Russia when they were the ones who colluded with Russia. They're accusing Trump supporters of being intolerant and full of hate when they're the ones who are intolerant and full of hate. So, you know how you know a liberal? Whatever he accuses you of is what he or she is guilty of. That's how you know him. 617-266-6868. Okay, we'll take more of your calls. The president giving a speech in Utah. Evan Heidenrich is in the WRKO newsroom. He has the latest. Evan, what does the president have to say? 2:35 here on the great WRKO. Okay, Antifa strikes again. This time at a Harvard bookstore, the Harvard Co-op, hospitalizing a Trump supporter for attending a lecture. 7 to 10 of them, at least, both men and women, beat him to a pulp. In fact, fractured his face. He's lucky to be alive. 617-266-6868. Another one in Somerville, a Trump supporter, had his home vandalized, his pickup truck vandalized. His crime, he had a Make America Great Again sign in his house window and a sticker supporting President Trump on his truck. Is Antifa out of control? And is it time for the governor and for Maura Healey to start putting Antifa on notice? Ronnie in Boston, you're up next. Go ahead, Ronnie.
Hey, Jeff, thanks for taking the call. Obviously, you know how I feel about Antifa. They're despicable. They're a hate group, and they don't want to debate anybody. They don't organize debates. They don't have debates. Their sole existence is to just beat people up who think differently. Having said all that, those who go out of their way to find trouble will find trouble, Jeff. So I don't have any sympathy for this guy, Matthias, either. He went out of his way to go into the hornet's nest. He got in without violence. He was able to ask his troll questions without violence, and he was thrown out without violence. But the minute he charged 7 of them, when he could have just walked away, I mean, isn't that no different than some Jets fan that shows up at a Patriots bar and just keeps running his mouth, and then when he gets knocked out, wonders why it happened? I mean, these guys went out of their way to look for trouble, Jeff, don't you think?
Ronnie, let me ask you this. Look, if it was my son, I would have said, son, stay away. It's not worth it. You're asking for trouble. But let me just ask you this. Let me play devil's advocate. You're right. He went to the event. It was a lecture by this pro-Antifa intellectual. He asked a few pointed questions. They didn't like it. They eventually threw him out.
And no violence to that point.
Yeah,
right?
No, I mean, like, in terms of physical violence. You're completely right. And then he's waiting outside. He's debating several of these Antifa supporters. He says it's going reasonably well. Then out of the blue, as he's debating them, this woman punches him in the face, says he's a Nazi. Then another woman, the first 2 were women, hits him from the back. Then they a mob start punching him in the face. So he runs away from them, and they're yelling, "Run, Nazi, run." They're basically taunting him. And that's when he ran back in, clocked one of them, punched one of them, and then they started stomping him and beating him. Let me ask you this, Ronnie. You go to an event, they kick you out, you start debating somebody outside the bookstore, out of the blue, somebody sucker punches you, then somebody else sucker punches you, then a couple of other people punch you in the face, you start, stumbling or running away from them, they're taunting you, and you go, you know what, blank it. Like, blank you. You punched me in the face, I'm going to punch you. I'm just asking, was he wrong to have jumped back into the crowd and thrown a punch? Should he have just left and called the police and pressed charges?
I mean, personally, I think he never should have showed up at all. I mean, it's Antifa. This is not an intellectual, group of people. They're hateful, violent. I mean, you know exactly what you're getting into. And I just kind of feel like this guy got a lot more than he bargained for. And now he's feigning ignorance. Like, well, geez, I just showed up to debate and ask questions. I mean, my God, it's like showing up to a jihadi convention and saying, well, geez, I only meant to ask a couple respectful questions. I mean, you got to use your head a little bit,
Ronnie, thank you for that call. I appreciate it, buddy. 617-266-6868. Okay. We may all be leaving Massachusetts. This may all be a moot point. Whether Antifa, whether they beat us all up or not, or vandalize our homes and our cars and trucks. In about 4 or 5 years, every middle working class tax-paying member, small business owner, we may be out. We may be refugees. Whether we're going to go to New Hampshire or Texas or somewhere else, all this may be moot. Why? Okay, listen to this story. The Moonbats think they're now on the verge of a huge, massive victory. Supporters of 2 questions, which they say are designed to help workers, say that they have now collected enough signatures, voter signatures, to guarantee questions a place on the 2018 ballot. In fact, they're going to submit it to Secretary of State William Galvin's office tomorrow at high noon. Before that, they're planning a rally in Boston at 1 Ashburton Place to celebrate what they say is going to be a great victory for the so-called, quote-unquote, workers' movement. The labor unions, by the way, are like popping champagne corks already. So expect these 2 questions on the ballot in the 2018 midterms. Basically, your cost and standard of living depends now on these 2 ballot questions, I'm telling you. The first ballot question would guarantee paid family and medical leave for every single worker in Massachusetts. So basically, you're going to get paid leave, and you're going to get medical leave, and you're going to get family leave. And they want this to apply to every worker in Massachusetts. The second ballot question would raise the state's minimum wage to $15 an hour. They say incrementally, step by step, until 2022. Now, why is this going to be an economic death blow to Massachusetts? Listen to this and remember this very, very well. I'm choosing my words very carefully. If these measures pass, we will become officially the California of the East Coast. Let me repeat that. We will become the California of the East Coast. The $15 an hour, the minimum wage provision, is aimed primarily at the fast food workers. So what is going to happen, like in California, which has a very high minimum wage, you're going to see then, you're going to force businesses to either adapt and adopt automation, in other words, get robots or have an automated workforce. So you're going to be throwing people out of work. That's what it's going to do. Or you're going to force them to flee the state. Take your pick. Because if you impose a $15 an hour minimum wage, you are going to be crushing and killing many small businesses and killing numerous jobs because they cannot afford it. Or they're going to have to pass on the costs to you to make it, basically your Big Mac is going to be your Big Mac value meal is going to be basically $10. In other words, make the cost of living so high, it's almost unlivable. So you're going to see more people get thrown out of jobs, more unemployment. They're going to be going on unemployment insurance or welfare or collecting EBT. So that means the welfare state is going to grow. Government costs are going to grow. Taxes have to go up to keep sustaining more and more people on welfare or taking government assistance. And the cost of living will continue to go up because they have to impose, they're going to transfer these costs from the employer to the employee. Same thing with family mandated across the state, family paid medical leave or family paid leave. Many businesses are going to say either we have to pass on the costs to our to our customers, pass on the costs to our customers, or we're just going to hire less people because it's so expensive now to hire somebody, or we're going to have to leave the state. So let me tell you what's going to happen. Unemployment is going to go up dramatically. Economic growth is going to be zero. You're going to have people, businesses, taxpayers fleeing the state. The cost of living is going to go through the roof, and you're going to have many more people now collecting government assistance, food stamps, welfare, EBT, unemployment insurance, you name it. In other words, you're going to have California. We've already got the skyrocketing housing and the congestion and the traffic. Now, very soon, we're going to have the economic migration. That's going to come. And don't take my word for it. Listen now to this. This is one hell of a column. It's by Steve Lopez. He's a reporter at the Los Angeles Times. The Los Angeles Times is actually a liberal newspaper. But there has been such a massive flight of businesses, middle working class people from California that they're like, we're losing our tax base. The middle class is fleeing. They're leaving. Adios, amigos. And so what they did was they sent this reporter, talk to all these former Californians and ask them, why did you decide to leave? And many of them are relocating to two states, Arizona and Nevada, which are nearby. And I just want to read to you the lead, because you tell me if this doesn't sound like Massachusetts to you, and frankly to many big cities and states that are now run by liberals or liberal policies. Listen now to this. Quote, the rent steals so much of your paycheck, you might have to move back in with your parents, and half your life is spent staring at the rear end of the car in front of you. You'd like to think it will get better, but when? All around you, young and old alike are saying goodbye to California. So, they're interviewing people. Listen to this one. Michael J. Van Essen. Best thing I could have done, he said, was leaving California. He said he was paying $1,160 for a one-bedroom apartment in Silver Lake, California, until a year and a half ago. Then he says he decided to move to Iowa. Check this out. He bought a house with a creek behind it for $165,000. In Mason City, Iowa, he now pays $500 a month less on his mortgage than he did on his rent in L.A. The reporter says, you have no idea how many people I interviewed that were very similar to this guy, Michael Van Essen. He says the biggest place they've all gone to is Arizona, but especially Las Vegas and the suburbs of Las Vegas in Nevada. He said those who leave California, they go to Vegas. Why? It's close. It's a job center. It's got tons of jobs. And the cost of living is much cheaper, with plenty of brand new houses that go for between $200,000 and $300,000. Now, here is the kicker. Almost every single person that is interviewed in this LA Times piece is a self-described Democrat, liberal, moonbat. In fact, most of them say they're openly Hillary Clinton supporters. They're liberals. They're progressives. And they go, California, we can't take the cost of living. The taxes are too high. There aren't enough jobs available. The cost of living is too high. The congestion, too many people, the overpopulation. We can't take it. In other words, all the illegals they let into California, and now they're fleeing their own state that they helped create. Don't believe me? Listen to this, okay? This one's a beauty. Cindy Hernandez. She is a 30-year-old USC grad, University of Southern California. She says she grew up in California, born and raised, and she says it broke her heart to have to leave California because she's a California gal. You know what her job is? I am a community organizer with NARAL Pro-Choice in Nevada. She's a big community activist who is working for Hillary on the Hillary campaign and said she decided to leave. She couldn't take it anymore. She said, why did you choose Nevada? Listen to this. It's easier to live here and have a comfortable lifestyle. She now lives in a 2-bedroom Mountain View apartment home that she shares with her roommate. She says she only pays $650 a month. She lives in a gated development with free Wi-Fi, a swimming pool, a cabana shaded deck, a fitness center, a media room, and complimentary beverages. She goes, I'm not living at an apartment complex. It's a freaking resort. And all of them say, well, what's going on in Nevada? Listen to this. No corporate taxes, no personal income tax. They go, the taxes are so much lower. And they go, and there's a pro-business environment here. And because there are pro-business environment, pro-business regulations that encourage jobs and job creators and businesses, they go, hey, there are jobs everywhere. And companies are moving in, and factories are coming in, and corporations are moving in, and shops are being opened, and businesses are being opened. She goes, it's incredible. So I'm not paying through the nose in taxes. Everything is cheap and affordable. And if you want a job, there's jobs galore for everybody. But what do they do when they live in Nevada? Do you think the light bulb goes off and they say, maybe that high minimum wage, it's a jobs killer. It's no good. Maybe mandatory paid family and medical leave, it's a jobs killer. It's no good. Maybe all these people on welfare and illegal immigrants, it's raising our taxes, making the cost of government too high. It's no good. Maybe all these high regulations and taxes are driving up the cost of business and doing business, that now the cost of living becomes so high because it's passed off to the customer. It's no good. No. Like my sister-in-law tells me, all of these moonbats from California, they pour into Arizona for the low taxes, the jobs, the low cost of living, and what do? They vote for the very same party, the very same policies that created the dump that is California today. They're like locusts. They come to take advantage, like parasites. They feed off the hosts, but then they bring their disease with them. And now Nevada is trending purple, Arizona is trending purple, and they're going to keep doing it until they wreck every part of the country. But this is my point. You have a $15 an hour minimum wage. You mandate expensive paid family and medical leave? Combine that with the outrageous traffic, the high cost of living, the high rents, the soaring housing prices. You know what the middle class and working class is going to say? Sayonara. Adios. And Massachusetts will become the California of the East Coast. Dominated by one class, the very rich, and the rest of the population, overwhelmingly poor. Hey, Chief, you say you're against the middle class being quote-unquote hammered? Start with Massachusetts. Say no to a $15 minimum wage. Agree? Disagree? Will this put Massachusetts out of business? 617-266-6868. Your reaction next. Let's go to Paul. Let's go to Paul first. Go ahead, Paul. Thanks for holding and welcome.
Hi, Jeff. I haven't heard anybody bring this point up, but I had a manufacturing business for many, many years. I'm, retired now, but what's going to happen with this minimum wage is they keep raising it. What they want to do, and nobody's saying this, but what they really want to do is they want to bring the minimum wage up so everybody tools up. Anybody in manufacturing will tool up. You notice it now. They're getting robots and everything else.
That's right.
Nobody's going to have jobs, and they want everybody to be on welfare. That's their MO anyway. They want everybody to be on welfare. They don't want this for the good of people. Because, again, us manufacturers, we're smarter than that. We're going to go out and get tooled up and everything else. I mean, these companies, the retrofit machinery and everything else right now, they are booming.
Paul, you're 1,000% right, but I want to ask you this question, and if we have to continue it tomorrow, I will. Okay, I agree with you. They want essentially to force everybody to go, robots, automation, and have everybody on welfare. But who's going to pay for everybody on welfare?
Well, that's the problem. That's when companies will go offshore and everything else. Companies will start going offshore. That's why they did to begin with, because of high taxation. If this tax program goes through the right way, which I think it's going to, there's going to be more jobs around, and okay, what'll happen is it'll eventually lead to some more inflation, but let's worry about that later on. As long as people are working, they'll be competitive. There'll be competition in the workplace.
Bingo. Excellent. David in New Hampshire. Go ahead, David. I've got a minute.
Sure.
Go.
Comment ça va, mon ami?
Ça va bien, my friend.
I'm doing good. Hey, you got a problem. Stop telling people move to New Hampshire. I moved here 45 years ago, and all I've seen is my tax rate go sky high when the rest of the people come up here. The school system's not good enough for them. The city's not good enough for them. Everything has to be changed.
So you don't want these Massachusetts refugees going up to New Hampshire and turning it purple and now maybe even blue?
No, I'm from Vermont originally.
So you fled the socialists in Vermont?
No, it was Republican when I was there.
Okay, that's a long time ago.
It was a long time ago. My wife is from Michigan a long time ago.
David, I got to let you go, but listen, my friend, we got to go somewhere. Somebody take us.
Voice of Boston is you. 680 WRKO Boston, 93.7 WEEI HD2 Lawrence, Boston. It's 3 o'clock.